Now, reflections can really be over any line, and if you have a random line like the example before, you can figure out the pattern. But there are some lines, common lines, where reflections happen that we can write rules for. So you don't have to figure it out, you can basically use a formula. A rule is a way to talk about a formula. So if I'm going to reflect over the x-axis, right here, if I think about folding my figure so that it matches up, really what I'm talking about is m is 1 unit from the axes, so m prime will be 1 unit also. H is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And D is 1, 2, 3 units above, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3 units below. Well, there has to be an easier way than doing that every time. So let's take a look at our coordinates and see if we can find a pattern. H is at -4, 5. D is at -6, 3. And M is at -3, 1. Now M prime ends up being -3, -1. H prime is at -4, -5, and D prime is at -6, -3. If you look at this coordinate to this coordinate, what changes? The only thing that changes is the sign on the y coordinate. So my rule is this. We say t of xy, you take your original, and it becomes t prime of, my x stayed the same, and I do the opposite sign on the y. If it is in the bottom quadrants, 3 and 4, it will flip up into the top quadrants, and vice versa. So you can, if you forget the rule, you can figure them out with a quick example on the side of your paper, but this is like a shortcut, a formula. So what would the formula be if I wanted to reflect over the y-axis? Well, m is 1, 2, 3 units, 1, 2, 3 units. So m prime is at 3, 1 instead of -3, 1. D is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. So that means that D prime is at 6, 3, where this D was at -6, -3. Oops, positive 3. -6, positive 3. And H is at -4, 5. H prime is going to be at 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. At 4, 5. So again, if you look at the corresponding pre-image and image points, what you see happening for rule is that I took my original x and y and I changed the sign on the x and the x only, and I left the y alone. Now we can also flip things over y equals x. Now y equals x is that diagonal line that goes through 0, 0 and has a positive slope of 1. So it cuts across like this. So it's a little trickier to envision. But if we thought about it, and I told you that m prime is going to end up at 1, -3, and that h prime ends up at 5, -4, and d prime ends up at 3, -6. And you can see we have the exact same figure, but compared to our original d of -6, 3, h of -4, 5, and m at -3, 1, what happens to my coordinates? Well, -3, 1, 1, -3. It looks like They just flip spots. The y becomes the x becomes the y. Negative 4, 5 becomes 5, negative 4. So that is my rule. You take your original and you just flip-flop your x and your y. Now, reflection over y equals negative x is the diagonal that goes the other direction. So it goes through 0, 0, has a slope of negative 1 over 1. So it's going to cut through like this. Now, if you could envision, if h is here, looks like one diagonal unit away, h prime is going to end up there. And we could go through d is approximately 1 diagonal and a half, 1 diagonal and a half, and it would end up here. And I'm going to tell you that your coordinates of d prime and h prime and m prime, which is 1, here's m prime, and that's at negative 1, 3. And again, if you go back to what d is negative 6, 3. H is at negative 4, 5. And m is at negative 3, 1. And you look at how do they change from m prime. Again, it seems like our x and our y are flipped, but so are our signs. And so my rule here is that I take my original and I do the opposite sign on the y first and the opposite sign on my x. So my old x and y are going to not only switch positions, but they also switch signs. They become opposite signs. So to just wrap up the discussion of reflections, basically in summary, when we think about our ABCDO, A, B, C, D are all preserved. And O is reversed. My orientation is always going to be reversed. Clockwise to counterclockwise, counterclockwise to clockwise.